Chapter 9. "I just can't sit here doing nothing any longer," Stephen declared, his brown eyes filled with frustration. Elizabeth flashed her brother a sympathetic look. She knew exactly how he was feeling. She'd had about all the waiting she could take, too. She had driven home right after school, having managed to finish her column for the Oracle during her free period. It was probably the worst one she had ever written, but at least it was done. Stephen and her parents were in the kitchen, in practically the same positions they had occupied the night before. The Coast Guard was still looking for Jessica and Winston, using boats and helicopters, and the Wakefield and Egbert families couldn't do anything but sit by the phone and wait for the latest report from the search team. Mr. Wakefield put a hand on his son's shoulder. "It's tough not being able to take any action ourselves," he agreed. "We just have to be patient." "But we could take action ourselves," Elizabeth spoke up. Her family looked at her, obviously startled by her suggestion. "I bumped into Bruce Patman in the hall after last bell," she explained. "He just called Nicholas Morrow at work." Nicholas, already a high school graduate, was taking time off before college to work in his father's computer company. "Bruce and Nicholas started talking about Jessica and Winston, and Nicholas offered to take a group of us out in his family's boat to look for them." "Do you think that's a good idea, Ned? Do you think it's safe?" Alice Wakefield anxiously asked her husband. "Oh, Mom, you know Nicholas," Elizabeth said quickly, before her father could respond. "He's a very experienced sailor. He races his own sailboat single-handedly, and he's very mature and responsible." "Well," Mr. Wakefield loosened the knot on his tie as he thought about the suggestion. "I don't see why not, Alice. There won't be any trouble with Nicholas at the helm. The weather's perfect besides." "Good, then I'll call him right now." Elizabeth hurried to the telephone, glad to have something to do. "Way to go, Liz," Stephen cheered. Elizabeth reached Nicholas at his office. He had already arranged to take the rest of the afternoon off, and he was glad the Wakefields had decided to take him up on his offer. "He said he'll meet us at the marina in half an hour," Elizabeth informed Stephen. "Bruce and Ken are going to come along, and Nicholas says there's plenty of room for Kara and Jeffrey, too. Can we borrow your car, Dad?" "Sure. Good luck," Mr. Wakefield encouraged them. "I hope you find her, but be careful." Stephen was already halfway to the door. "Let's go!" Elizabeth and Stephen picked up Kara and Jeffrey on the way to the marina. Nicholas, Bruce, and Ken, all dressed in shorts and t-shirts and wearing sunglasses, were already gathered at the pier where the Morrows' yacht was berthed. As she strode down the weathered wooden ramp, Elizabeth experienced a sensation of déjà vu that sent a shiver up her spine. Was it really only yesterday that she and Jessica had arrived at the marina, just in time to board the Maverick and head off on the field trip? It seemed like years had elapsed since then. Now Elizabeth felt a qualm on her own behalf. The wind down by the water was very brisk, and whitecaps dotted the ocean. Even though the sky was clear, there were a few dark clouds on the horizon, far, far away. She didn't really want to get on another boat after what she'd gone through the day before. "You chicken," she accused herself. "You'll be perfectly safe with Nicholas in charge, and Jessica's life is at stake." Elizabeth felt braver when Jeffrey took her hand and gave it a warm squeeze, as if he knew what she was thinking. Nicholas greeted Elizabeth with a brotherly hug. "I can imagine what you guys are going through," he said as he took Stephen's hand firmly. His voice was rough with emotion, and Elizabeth knew he was thinking about his own sister, Regina, who had died recently. "Thank you so much for helping us look for Jessica and Winston," Elizabeth said softly. Nicholas squeezed her shoulder with one strong hand. "It's the least I can do." A minute later, the entire group had boarded the 28-foot Nighthawk. While Nicholas started the powerful engine, the others removed the tarps. Within 5 minutes, they were chugging out of the harbor. Nicholas carefully obeyed the harbor speed limit until he reached the buoys marking the harbor mouth, and then he gunned the engine, and the Nighthawk really took off. Ken spread out a nautical map of the area. Bruce took the wheel while Nicholas conferred with Ken about the best possible course to take. Judging by the direction of the storm yesterday, I think we should head for the southernmost Channel Islands, Ken recommended. We were only 15 minutes from Anacapa Island when we jumped ship and Jess and Winston disappeared. They might have made it back to Anacapa, or another one of these little islands. He pointed them out on a map. It looks like a logical place to start, Nicholas agreed. Hey, Patman, he yelled as the Nighthawk began speeding even faster. What are you trying to do with my boat? Fly it? Bruce looked over his shoulder, his hair whipping in the wind, and grinned. I happen to know for a fact that Jessica Wakefield doesn't like to be kept waiting, he retorted. Pretending to be peeved, Nicholas took over the wheel. From where she was sitting, snuggled securely next to Geoffrey, Elizabeth watched Nicholas. His strong profile, the dark hair, straight nose, and determined expression, and his take-charge attitude filled her with hope. And Bruce's flip remark had lightened her heart. Bruce spoke as if Jessica were just over the curve of the horizon, standing on the shore of one of the islands, tapping her foot impatiently. It was a welcome change from the way the gang had been talking earlier in the day during lunch period. Elizabeth took a deep breath of the crisp, salty air. We're going to find them, she told Geoffrey confidently. I just have a feeling. Geoffrey pulled her closer to him, his eyes taking on some of the enthusiasm in her own. That's the spirit, Liz. Soon they neared the spot where Ken thought the Maverick had foundered. As Nicholas swung the Nighthawk in a broad arc, setting a course for the islands Ken had pinpointed on the map, the others took up posts along the yacht's railings. Stephen, Kara, and Bruce looked off the starboard side, while Elizabeth, Geoffrey, and Ken covered the port. They weren't looking for a lifeboat anymore, but they were hoping to spot some other evidence. A piece of clothing, for instance. A message in a bottle would be nice, Ken joked. They were still a couple of miles from the first of the Channel Islands when the rain began. First it fell in large, solitary drops, then it grew to a steady downpour. The dark clouds that had been hovering on the horizon when they started out from the marina were now looming overhead. Nicholas frowned. I don't like this weather, he admitted. But it shouldn't slow us down. The Nighthawk's seen worse. We keep a bunch of raincoats in that box over there. Help yourselves. Ken caught Elizabeth's eye. I don't like this weather either, he said in a low voice. It's too much like the weather yesterday. Oh, I don't know, Elizabeth said. I'm sure it's just a passing shower, she commented with a casual wave of her hand. The truth was, the butterflies had started up in her stomach, too, but she didn't want to panic. Not now, when they had a chance of finding Jessica and Winston. Just then, a spidery streak of lightning flickered across the sky. Only seconds later, the ear-splitting boom of a thunderclap made them all jump. Nicholas was listening to the ship-to-shore radio, and now he slapped his hand against the wheel. Of all the luck! He exclaimed. What is it? Ken asked, moving closer so he could hear the radio, too. The message that had caught Nicholas's attention was repeated on the radio, punctuated by sharp bursts of static. It was an all-craft warning to return to shore. Another storm was approaching, one that promised to be as severe as that of the previous day. No one, not even a bitterly disappointed Elizabeth, argued with Nicholas as he made a U-turn and headed back toward the coast. If it wasn't safe to be on the water, they had no choice but to abandon their search. After dropping off their friends, Stephen and Elizabeth headed straight home. Stephen tried to look at the bright side. Well, at least we got out of the house for a while. We killed some time. Yes, that's true. Elizabeth stared out the car window at the driving rain. Jessica and Winston were out there somewhere in this storm, alone and unprotected. To Elizabeth and Stephen's surprise, When they pulled into the driveway, their parents were standing in the front doorway, as if they'd been watching for them to return. "We were worried to death," Mrs. Wakefield cried as Elizabeth and Stephen climbed out of the car. She looked mad, upset, and relieved all at the same time. "About 15 minutes after you left, we heard on the radio that there was a bad storm coming," Mr. Wakefield explained, his own relief apparent. "They were telling all the boats to get off the water." "I'm sorry you were worried, but we got the warning and Nicholas came right home," Elizabeth assured them. "I told you he was mature and responsible," she added in a teasing tone. But instead of smiling as Elizabeth hoped, her mother started crying quietly. Elizabeth rushed to her side. "I'm sorry, Mom," she repeated, giving her mother a big hug. "We really did get back as fast as we could." "I was so afraid we were going to lose you and Stephen, too," Mrs. Wakefield whispered as she held her daughter tightly. "I couldn't bear it." "Oh, Mom!" Tears sprang to Elizabeth's eyes. "We didn't mean to scare you, and we're fine. Please don't be sad." Alice Wakefield wiped at her eyes and laughed shakily. "Once a mother hen, always a mother hen, I guess," she said, doing her best to sound more cheerful. "No matter how big you kids get, I'm always going to worry about you." Now Stephen embraced his mother. Then the four realized that while they had been standing on the front steps talking and hugging, they'd also been getting soaked to the skin by the rain. "Come inside right this minute," Mrs. Wakefield ordered her family, her eyes twinkling through the traces of tears. "Mother Hen says you'd all better change into some dry clothes on the double. I'll have hot chocolate waiting for you in the kitchen." Elizabeth raced Stephen upstairs. Although he lived in a dorm on campus, Stephen still kept a lot of his clothes in his room at home. In her own room, Elizabeth shed her wet clothing quickly, changing into a clean pair of jeans and a royal blue, long-sleeved cotton shirt. She toweled off her hair and then faced the mirror over her dresser, studying her face as she ran a comb through her damp blonde hair. The eyes that stared back at her were uniquely her own, and yet at the same time they were just like Jessica's. By this point in her life, Elizabeth was used to the fact that she shared a physical identity with her twin. Shared or had shared? "Coming back downstairs, Liz?" Stephen asked, sticking his head around her bedroom door. "Yep, just a minute." Elizabeth brushed her hair back from her face, then fastened it in the back with one big barrette. Stephen flopped down on Elizabeth's bed to wait for her. His eyes met hers in the mirror. "Are you all right? You look pale." Her hair taken care of, Elizabeth turned away from the mirror. "I'm just so worried," she explained. "And what Mom and Dad said just now, the way they reacted, really shook me up." "How do you mean?" "Mom said they were afraid of losing us too, remember? That sounds like they've already given up on Jessica. Like they think she really is lost. Forever." Stephen fiddled with the bedspread, refusing to meet Elizabeth's eyes. "I think they want to believe she's okay. So do I. But Liz, the outlook isn't good. We have to face that." "You can face it if you want," Elizabeth declared, dangerously close to another bout of crying. "I can see as well as anybody that the situation seems bad. But I don't believe Jessica's—" Her voice trailed off. She couldn't bring herself to complete the sentence. "That Jess is dead?" Stephen finished the sentence for her. "She can't be," Elizabeth said passionately. "I know! She repeated with conviction. Stephen nodded in understanding. The whole family recognized that there was a strong bond between the twin sisters. On more than one occasion in the past, when they had been miles away from each other, Elizabeth had felt that Jessica was in trouble and vice versa. If one twin experienced pain, the other sensed it. And Elizabeth didn't feel that Jessica had drowned. Instead, she felt that Jessica was alive and safe, and for the moment she had to believe that there was still hope. End of chapter 9.